Okay, so hello and a grateful welcome to everyone who is here at this present moment, and also to those people who are maybe watching this later on, watching the recording. So today we are continuing with a series of looking into the teachings of philosopher monk, a great teacher from the past, uh, the modern era, a monk from Thailand named Buddhasa. And the subject that we'll be looking at today is the ABCs of Buddhist study. So, something that is very valuable for anyone here who's getting into the path and wants to further their understanding of Buddhism, meditation, and walking the enlightened path. Before we start today, does anyone have any question that they feel is essential or vital to ask before we start? Okay, so we will start with some meditation. You can go ahead and find your meditation position. Sitting, standing, in a chair, whatever is comfortable, simple, and stable. That is the right meditation position for this present moment. And as we find our meditation position, really checking into the body and making sure that the whole body is comfortable, all the way from the tips of our toes, the feet and the legs, the thighs, the butt. Meditation is not something to rush. So give plenty of attention to finding that comfortable, stable position. And our meditation position is a place to put the body down. Okay, so we aren't doing anything with the body. We're not looking at anything. We're not going anywhere. We're not using the body to wash ourselves or to get food or to drink something or to play a game, but really putting the body down to be in a still and stable position. And as we put the body down, we can begin to become more aware of our breathing. The breathing as it is flowing in and flowing out. Feeling the breath in the body. And whatever thoughts or worries or reactivity or judgment that may be hanging in the air from our day or our week, as we're breathing, letting all that to settle, to come to a rest in our body. Breathing and bringing the mind home to the body. And beginning to use all that energy of reactivity or judgment or worry, using all that energy, converting it to awareness. Breathing and being aware of the body and relaxing the heart, the mind, relaxing the self. And finding ourselves in this way of just sitting, feeling, breathing, and being aware. Just breathing and being aware. And start to recognize the truth, the reality of this present moment awareness. That this is not something secondary or vague or general or something that we need to put effort forth to believe in or to experience, but that this present moment awareness, just sitting here, just breathing, just being aware, is the truth, is reality, and touching that, allowing that to permeate, to flow throughout the body and mind at this moment. Whatever the mind gets involved with, just coming back to the body sitting here, breathing and aware. whatever comes up, releasing and relaxing, letting go, just breathing and being aware. Each and every breath, just like a restart, a refresh, beginning again at this present moment. This direct, lived experience of reality. Each and every breath revealing reality, revealing truth. Whatever comes up, experiencing it with a quality of no judgment, and also not relying on concepts to understand it or to experience it, but just to experience it as it is in this present moment, without any concept or belief. Sitting only, breathing only, aware only, without any judgment, without any need for secondary thought, but just to continue breathing and being aware. Okay, so we'll start now with our reading on the ABCs of Buddhist study. We left off last time in the reading emphasizing the importance of giving our full attention to the reality that is revealed in the present moment through our senses, but that if we don't apply any interest, if we are not interested in the present moment experience of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind, then we won't be able to learn about the truth, learn about reality. So we will be wasting our senses and wasting our body and mind if we aren't interested, if we aren't willing to really look closely with a sense of interest. So, the ABCs of Buddhist study. Anyone who wants to understand Dhamma, which we can also translate as a truth, okay, or the Buddhist teachings, or the teachings of the truth. Anyone who wants to understand Dhamma, first of all, has to be interested in studying everything concerning the sense media. Okay, so these are all of our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind experiences. If asked what the ABCs of Buddhism are, reply the senses. Okay, so if you were to be asked what are the ABCs of Buddhism, what are the basics of Buddhism, you should reply, the senses. Begin your study at the basic ABC level with a study of the senses. The Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha can keep for later. So Buddhasa, Ajahn Buddhasa here, this great philosopher monk, academic monk, practice monk, really world-renowned in his understanding of Buddhism and meditation, and coming from Thailand, coming from a Buddhist society, the high bar of what Buddhism is. If asked what the ABCs of Buddhism are, would say the senses. And to begin your study of Buddhism with a study of the senses, so a direct practice of meditation. And even the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha can keep for later. So start with this investigation into your direct experience of the body and mind, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching at this present moment as you're beginning into Buddhism. So the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha can keep for later. They are not the origin of our problems. Suffering lies in wrongdoing or unskillful action concerning the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. The Buddha cannot help us create suffering or directly help us to end suffering. The Buddha can only advise us in how to manage our reactions to sense experience. In revealing suffering and its quenching or its ending, so in revealing dukkha, which people often say is a suffering, so that Buddhism teaches that life is suffering, but this suffering is more about dissatisfaction, a sense of not being satisfied. It's not really talking about a miserableness or a feeling of misery, but more this general sense of not being satisfied that leads us to make those decisions where we find ourselves to be miserable or absolutely miserable. So the Buddha can't help us create dissatisfaction or directly help us to satisfy, to end that dissatisfaction. The Buddha can only advise us in how to manage our reactions to sense experiences. In revealing dissatisfaction and its quenching, its satisfying, he points to the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, which means that the teaching is really all about getting to know the senses in order so that we can regulate our responses to them such that dukkha doesn't arise, so that this sense of dissatisfaction doesn't arise. The story ends right where no sufferings can arise. So the Buddhist teachings can reveal to us the suffering, this sense of dissatisfaction, to be aware of this sense of dissatisfaction through our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, but not through complicated beliefs, complicated social structures, where your status is, what other people think about you, where you want to go, where you're coming from, what you did yesterday. All of that is not going to reveal anything. But the Buddhist teachings can point to this unsatisfactory quality and the ending of this unsatisfactory quality through our senses, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And the story, this Buddhist teaching in a sense, ends right where no sufferings can arise. So right where we get to know the senses to a point of intimacy, a point of closeness, the senses themselves, the seeing itself, the hearing itself, the feeling itself, the body itself, the mind itself, to where that reactivity doesn't arise. And so that the suffering does not arise as well. Our craving doesn't arise from that contact. The story ends right there. Therefore, this little volume of Seeing with the Eye of Dhamma, which is the name of this text, encourages you to be interested in matters of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind as being the most important for human beings to know. Otherwise, you won't be able to solve any of the problems in your mind. Okay? So solving these complicated intellectual problems, and I often say this, not by becoming more selfish, not by developing a more complicated, structured way of satisfying yourself or fixing yourself, of solving the problem of yourself, but actually by becoming interested in the sense experience itself at this moment. The eyes themselves, the ears themselves, the nose themselves, the smelling, the feeling, the mind itself, the body itself at this present moment, which is not so convoluted. It is not so nebulous or vague, but it's a very present moment lived experience that we can bring ourselves back to at any moment, in any situation. It gives us this point of grounding. Okay? So we need to become interested in the matters, the conditions, the states of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and see them as being the most important for human beings to know, rather than some idea about the situation that's happening. Otherwise, you won't be able to solve any of the problems in your mind. The senses are the root of everything that happens in life and with our minds. They are the doors through which mind contacts the outer and inner worlds. Mind connects everything together. If there wasn't mind, there wouldn't be anything. Because there is mind, everything exists. All experiences, feelings of pleasure and pain, well-being and distress, life and death, anything and everything happen because there is mind. And we could also say this as awareness, okay? Awareness itself, mind itself. Mind, however, can't do anything without the 5 physical senses. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are the 5 communication media that allow mind to know the external world. The eyes communicate with visual forms. The ears communicate with sounds. The nose communicates with odors. The tongue communicates with flavors. And the skin communicates with tangible sensations. If these didn't exist, there would be almost nothing. And if there wasn't mind, there would be nothing at all. Generally, people aren't much interested in the realities of mind and show more interest in superficial matters, in the variety of sights, sounds, odors, flavors, and bodily sensations. This interest manifests as a troubling desire for the fun, stimulating, and pleasurable experiences available through these senses. And this is a major issue because this desire is the root of our dissatisfaction that leads us to do all kinds of unskillful activities, right? Get into all kinds of messes and just to feel generally unsatisfied and unpleasant. So that desire for the alcohol, for the sense media, for pleasant things in the eyes or pleasant things of the ears, or a certain quality of mind that you're desiring, this is causing the suffering, and then we think that, well, by following that desire, we're going to solve the suffering or feel satisfied, but actually it's that desire itself that is making us feel that way. That's why we are feeling that way, because of that state of desire. So this interest in a variety of sights, sounds, odors, flavors, and bodily sensations, this interest manifests as troubling desire for the fun, stimulating, and pleasurable experiences available through these senses. Driven by distorted desire, we worship and sacrifice to the senses rather than caring about the sukha and dukkha, the well-being and distress of mind itself. So we are not, Buddhism is not to seek pleasure, but actually it's to almost take pleasure off of this pedestal and put the well-being of the mind up there. But until we really start to get involved, it's our desire is so distorted that well-being is something we don't really care about, we don't value. We don't value it until we are in abject distress, massive distress or massive addiction, or we find ourselves in the street, right? Homeless, helpless, hopeless, as an addict or something like that, in a dire situation. And then well-being of mind has a value, but our perceptions, our way of being is so distorted that we feel almost excommunicated from well-being. We feel that it's not even a valid way to live, or it's not even possible, whereas it's very possible. But we need to detach, we need to put down this distorted desire. We need to see through it, this worship and sacrifice to the senses. We need to stop worshiping and sacrificing to the senses. Well, you feel a little bit uncomfortable. So what? You don't need to worship uncomfortableness. You don't need to worship pleasantness. You don't need to worship boredom. You don't need to make all these sacrifices to boredom, to pleasure, to pain. It's not necessary. It's just this kind of distorted desire that leads us to do that. So, driven by this distorted desire, we worship and sacrifice to the senses rather than caring about the well-being and distress of mind itself. And this is a really wonderful thing to offer to ourselves, not just, I desire something, let me go over there, but how about the state of my mind, to be in a place of well-being, to be in a place of calm, of peace, or if I feel in distress, if I feel afraid, scared. And to concern with that rather than worshiping and sacrificing to the senses. When we are interested only in superficialities and deceptive appearances, we are easily infatuated with loving and hating, which expand into fear, anxiety, longing, jealousy, envy, and the like. We don't look into the sources of all these problems, and we don't see that they come from the mind's ignorance, interacting with forms, sounds, odors, flavors, tangibles, and mental phenomena in deeply unskillful ways. These matters are the ABCs of life and our study. Yet some say it is ultimate meaning and purpose, and thus isn't appropriate for ordinary people who are warned against studying it. Okay, so these matters, as we're discussing, are the ABCs of life and our study. However, some people, maybe teachers or in Ajahn Buddhasa's religious context, he'd be talking about some monks who don't teach in such a certain way or talk about this so directly because they say that this is paramatta, or the ultimate meaning and purpose. And thus it isn't appropriate for ordinary people who are warned against studying it, meaning that it's too deep, it's too profound, and that it's better for them to just focus on a more simple practice of cultivating merit, making donations, doing acts of generosity, doing good deeds, and not to really talk about it as deeply as this. It says here, who are warned against studying it or warned against approaching it in this way. And this is somewhat true. You do need to recognize if it's someone who's an addict or someone who's coming from a really bad situation, you don't necessarily need to warn them and say, well, this could get heavy, this could get pretty serious because, their life is pretty heavy and pretty serious. But for a person who's just kind of on the sidelines and says, well, hey, meditation and Buddhism looks interesting, Zen looks interesting, you've got to realize that if you start taking these steps and investigating the mind and looking into these deeper truths, you can't turn back. You can't go back to a life of total superficiality, because you connect with something else and you go there. You meet yourself in that place, and you can't roll back that experience. You can't get back to this place of ignorance once you really start looking into these deeper truths. So there's some merit, or there's some truth to warning people, or at least making people aware, that this isn't this is serious stuff. This is really deep stuff. So these matters are the ABCs of life and our study. Yet some pundits, or we can say some monks, say it is paramatta, meaning ultimate meaning and purpose, and thus isn't appropriate for ordinary people who are warned against studying it. Really? People don't need to study ultimate meaning and purpose? Children don't need to know this? In truth, if we go back to the original Pali text, the original Buddhist teachings, at what the Buddha himself taught, we find that he pointed to the sense media and the sense contacts as the starting point for Dhamma study and training. And it's Buddhism here. It shows the kind of interesting case of Buddhism as to call it a religion is a little bit odd, because the ABCs, the direct teaching, the direct study, is to look at your senses right now. Not just for a moment and then to adopt some doctrine or some belief or some kind of worship or follow someone, but to continuously and deeply and regularly investigate your senses at this present moment. What's religious about your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind? What's religious about your direct human experience right now? It'd be difficult to say. You have to find out by yourself. We kind of find out our inner religion that comes up, our habits, our past activities, our failures and our successes that we are reminded of as we start to investigate the sense media. We start to really look at the mind. So Buddhism has this unique quality. In truth, if we go back to the original Buddhist teachings and look at what the Buddha himself taught, or the Buddha themselves taught, we find that they pointed to the sense media and sense contacts as the starting point for Dhamma study and training. We can say truth study and training as well. They are studied as paticca samuppada, the dependently co-arising process through which dukkha arises. What a shame that this teaching is suppressed by those who arrogantly claim it's too elevated and distant. So this paticca samuppada, or dependent co-arising process, this is where you will find it's a very profound and deep teaching, but this is where you'll find the concept of rebirth, or birth and death in Buddhism. And birth and death in Buddhism actually only happen from ignorance. So the only reason that we go through this arising and passing experience is because of our ignorance. And so there's an image here of this system. There's a lot of different ways that people put it together, but it's basically that through our ignorance, mental fabrications arise. Consciousness arises, name and form arises, the 6 sense spheres arise, contact arises, feeling tones arises, craving arises, attachment arises, becoming arises. Now you have birth, and then you have death. So the simplistic idea that a lot of people tend to have about birth and death in Buddhism, or rebirth in Buddhism, as if it's some kind of like a Pixar movie, where you're reborn as a squirrel after you die, has nothing to do with rebirth in Buddhism, and actually it's just a part of this dependent origination. And I'm going to share a picture of this in the on the Discord, so people can look at it sometime. But it's very, very deep teaching. And it contains within it this idea of no self. That from the Buddhist philosophical point of view, there's not a real permanent self that exists. But it's only our ignorance is the reason that this self-experience arises. Okay. So I implore you to get interested in the sense media, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, as the first subject that you need to know about and understand. And it really gives us this point of freedom in our lives. When this is the object of our study, this is the object of our interest, and this is where our investigation of truth starts. So when you go to the grocery store, there's lots of things to think about. When you go to court, when you go to the DMV, when you go to any social situation or any place in the world, there's a lot to think about. And it's easy that we get over-empathized, or we get confused, we get caught up in the outside world. So if we can take from this intention of knowing about the truth an investigation of our sense media, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind at this present moment, it gives us this freedom and this liberation to be independent among all different kinds of cause and conditions and confusing situations. It really gives us this place to come back to, this solidity. When we know all about them, we will understand other things too. We will know how to behave as human beings. Nobody will need to tell us that we shouldn't kill other beings, take what isn't given, and abuse sexuality. Ethics come naturally when we understand the reality underlying our experiences. At present, lacking genuine knowledge, we go astray. Even if warned not to do something, we don't listen. We act wickedly toward ourselves and others because we don't know how to live as human beings. Consequently, Please rethink and re-examine your life according to how a complete understanding of the sense media is essential for understanding Dhamma deeply enough to get the most benefit from it. I'll read that again. Consequently, please rethink and re-examine your life according to how a complete understanding of the sense media is essential for understanding truth deeply enough to get the most benefit from it, or Dhamma, Buddhist teachings, to get the most benefit from it. For the sake of fulfilling our great human potential and thereby quenching dukkha, or ending suffering, please remember this important theme. Practice in order to know the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind thoroughly. Okay. Questions, comments, sharing? Doesn't need to be anything profound, but just any question or comment that comes up.
So I actually have a question, and thank you too for the teaching. I really appreciate that. I think I've noticed something that I've been experiencing occasionally, where sometimes I will feel like maybe some pieces of these teachings I'm beginning to understand, but I guess I also get worried that maybe I just think I understand it and want to say that I understand it. How do I avoid falling into that trap?
Okay, Justin, it's simple. It's that this is an investigation of the sense media. This is the ABCs of our Buddhist study. And the best way to approach it is having this beginner's mind. If you know that you don't understand it fully, then you have a good understanding. If you are willing to detach from your understanding and investigate the sense media, then you have a good understanding. Simplicity is key, and practice is key. And here it's being laid out that the ABCs, which you're not going to have the rest of the alphabet without the ABCs, are to investigate the sense media, the sense experience, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind thoroughly, intimately, closely, to turn towards that. And that's what we do when we practice meditation. We look at that, we investigate that, we take a great interest in that. Having a special understanding or a deep understanding is just overrated. It's not important. We don't, actually being a teacher or, feeling that you have an understanding, it's really a big problem. It's really, like I have to go to the grocery store wearing monk's robes. So, it's, well, am I a monk? Am I a teacher? Am I a crazy person? What exactly am I? And it's just a headache. It's really problematic. So it's better to just investigate the sense media and be sincere in your interest and your curiosity, in your open-heartedness. A strong understanding means that you have compassion, gentleness, sincerity, that you're willing to let go of whatever status or gain you get or loss that you experience and just continue the investigation, continue the practice. That's really what's important.
Thank you.
Yeah. We don't want to approach Buddhism as becoming an understander, right? Understanders are the worst people, but the best people are practitioners, showing up to practice. And the more that you can find avenues and ways to show up to practice, whether it's a meditation retreat or it's a group like this, or it's your own meditation practice in your daily life, that's really the goal. If you need to have a goal in it, just keep showing up to practice, to study, whatever it is. And I think it's more worthwhile to understand not knowing and to develop a relationship with not knowing, to really be close with that fact that I don't know the subtle machinations of karma. I don't know the subtle aspects of cause and effect. I don't know fully why I can't control myself. I don't know my entire past. I don't know my entire future. I don't know exactly what Buddhasa meant by this exact thing, but I can take it and use it as a practitioner. So that's how I'm approaching it.
I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
So what would you say is the best way then to practice investigating sense media? Would this be during meditation or just generally during mindfulness? Because I know during meditation we put a lot of emphasis to our breathing, but should we also be focusing on the rest of our senses, what we can hear and feel, maybe even taste, or is this more of a something we should investigate during mindfulness, like day-to-day tasks?
It's more to in meditation in itself, you're going to be investigating the sense media or you're going to be applying a meditation method. And when it comes to the meditation of the breathing, a big part of that is going to be mindfulness of your body, awareness of your body. So you're going to be investigating it. Um, you don't need to try and, okay, you're focusing on the seeing itself, the vision, seeing itself, rather than the, labeling all the objects, okay? At that time, you don't need to add on hearing itself and tasting itself and smelling itself. You don't need to kind of make yourself out in that way. Um, but it's more about reeling back from the complicated ideas and the self-based involvements that come about from our reactivity to sense media. So if you are at the grocery store and you see someone who you knew or something, whatever, and now you start thinking about something, you just come back to the seeing itself or the hearing itself or the experience of your body itself. Basically pick one. You can only do one thing at a time, mostly. And for meditation in general, most of the time it's going to have a quality of investigating your sense media. That's really what meditation is. Um, yeah, it's meditation itself is a kind of investigation and a cultivation of interest. So whether that's getting very interested in your breath or very interested in your body, or very interested in your meditation method, maybe you're counting the breath, so that's kind of mind and also the body.
Okay, thank you.
It's really about coming back to the experience itself rather than the big complicated ideas or the big complicated reactivity that grows out of it. And in your meditation practice, going deeply into that, and in your normal everyday life, learning how to have a relationship with that, and learning that that's something that you can rely on. Your breathing, you can rely on that. You can have a relationship with that. And it's not your breathing in reference to some social situation or some worry or anxiety or something, whatever, but it's your breathing only. It's the direct experience of your breathing, and that's what you can rely on. And that's what can be a source of peace and joy and freedom. So it's a coming back, bringing back. Um, okay?
You're Monty?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Cheryl, guys. Um, I really appreciated the teaching today, and I've actually had to work. I don't know the language I'm thinking of, but I feel that
given the fact that my senses feel like they're turned up to 110, I've wanted to go get tested to see if I'm on the spectrum for autism, because the sensorial life that I live in is really on high speed. And I think it would just be good to know if I have an oversensitivity to my senses. But I did want to comment on the relationship I had to my hearing one time. I was getting fired from a job. And during the experience, I was sitting across from the person who was firing me, and they were saying I was going to get severance pay. Um, and I was listening to getting fired, and my brain could not compute what was happening. Like, I was going through this terrible shame spiral of how on earth did this happen? I can't believe I'm not good enough for these people. I can't believe I didn't do my job well. I didn't see this coming. Oh my gosh, how terrible. I'm terrible. And then I heard a bird chirping outside. And I leaned into the sound of that bird chirping. And in a way, I had used used my mind, the imagination opportunity to see that bird chirping with all of its joy and excitement about being out in the day. And I started to calm down really quickly and started to connect to the breath very deeply. So I just wanted to comment on the reality that what you were saying about some teachers feeling that, lay people don't need to have a relationship to their senses. It's too advanced for us. To tell you the truth, that day, that teaching almost saved me, emotionally and spiritually and psychologically and in every way. So I love this teaching today. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for your sharing. And Buddhasa brought that up kind of as a way to emphasize the depth of this teaching and the relevance of it. So in Buddhist countries, where the society has been Buddhist for many, many generations, the way of teaching can be changed to be much more devotional, and it's I think that there's benefits in that as well, because they're deeply generous societies, but you can't discount the importance of these really deep teachings for everyone.
Yeah, more personal than based on action, if that makes sense. Not to say that we shouldn't go about doing the quote unquote merit or the action of kindness, but to experience almost the kindness that can happen inside the sense organ. I don't know how to explain it, but it was a really amazing experience that day.
The kindness of hearing itself. And for the thing that you shared at the first, the first thing you shared about overstimulation, before you go to get a diagnosis or get checked about, being on the autism spectrum, you might want to get checked on the being outside of nature too much spectrum. Nature is very healing. Going into Deer Park is a great place to go. Take a road trip up to Deer Park and see if they have any retreats they're organizing. But just going out into a natural place, being there, and bathing in the forest, bathing in the mountains, and all that, it's very, very healing, and something I need to do more of as well. Okay. Anyone else?
Hi, you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, how do I refer to you?
You can say Bante. That just means
Bante?
like monk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Bante. So, the last person, what she talked about is very relatable, because I feel like I'm on the autism spectrum too. There's one story I like to share, which is one that's also the scene where I got fired from my job. In that moment, there wasn't no shame. There was nothing. I know my employer called me, talked about he would like to sack me, and I simply accepted. There wasn't a lot of emotion I had at the moment. There was just calmness, maybe some relief too, just from getting out of this job. I realized that for someone who had autism, they have something called autism burnouts, which is a moment where they get burnout for doing just menial tasks. And you get burnout for just to pretend that you're like normal people in front of other people. I sometimes couldn't understand what state am I at, so I overused my energy to do something that will quickly burn out myself. I feel really ashamed that I wasn't able to control myself to do the right thing. And I hope your method of feeling, sensation, and hearing, listening, seeing, feeling could help me understand myself. What stage am I at, so I can control myself better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's in our modern society, there's a lot of certain way you should act, and if you don't act in that way, then people are aggressive or kind of get involved in some way, or and maybe some of that's just in our mind. We feel self-conscious and we think that there's a certain way we need to act, and if we don't act that way, then there will be an issue. But some of it is definitely in the world. Especially in America, we have so many movie stars and TV shows that set this standard for how Americans or how human beings act together. And then if you're totally outside of that, then, it's very odd or you're seen as weird. And I've also experienced that. Maybe that's why I became a monk. So I can be weird as much, not fully, but depends on where I'm at. I can be pretty empty-headed in a weird way, hopefully in a good way. So I hope it helps the fear, and I'm glad that you're here.
I want to share something. I really appreciate your humor, Bante. Thank you for teaching us and making us laugh. I want to share about an insight I had today. I was at one time in front of a big Buddha meditating, and I just had this insight that I don't have to act based on so in the past, I have this menstrual cramps, as many women do. I have a headache. I have a problem in my body, and that makes me be more irritable and more rude to the people around me sometimes. And while I was meditating today and not feeling great, I just had this insight that if I practice enough, or if I practice a lot, I can kind of build a well within myself of loving kindness and compassion. So we're talking about the senses. So even if something hurts in my body, I can pay attention to the hurt, of course, but when I interact with someone, I can respond from my practice of compassion and loving kindness rather than my irritability. So yeah, I just wanted to share this kind of insight I had today.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I like that idea of a well, and the more that you develop a relationship with meditation, anyone, you establish a well in yourself. And then if you really get into it, if you really, take those weeks and months and years to make meditation a part of your life and make the Buddhist teachings or the Dhamma, deep teachings a part of your life, then even though you do fall off or that you do walk into the desert, you do leave your well unattended, that well is still going to be there. And when you drop your bucket, there might be some mud in there and you have to drink it, but there's water. There's a refuge, there's loving kindness, and there's an understanding that well inside of yourself is there. And you don't need to be afraid that there's not a well inside yourself, or that you have to look outside to find peace or happiness or healing, but it's inside. And you can develop it, you can fill it up. But even when it's not filled up, it's okay. Even if you don't have a well, it's okay. In the next life, you will have a well. Eventually. I see some people write in the chat. TT, do you want to read this with your voice, if you have a mic? And Simcha has a comment here, question. Simcha says, I feel I am between two different worlds, but in a short time, I feel that things are becoming more clear. It is difficult to learn to enjoy myself without falling back into old patterns that no longer serve me. Do you have any tips? The tip is to keep at it and to keep reinvesting and to keep following your compass. Keep pulling out the compass. Don't just put it away and bury it and say, well, I tried, whatever. But keep pulling it out. Keep finding that direction that you want to go in. And don't beat up on yourself when you make a mistake, and keep walking in that direction. And the more that you can be around people who are also hoping to go in that direction, or at least they're also using their compasses, the better. It's a journey, it's a process, and we're not just going to get there or change everything that we want to change in a week or a month or a year or 10 years, but it's really a way of coming back at this present moment and picking up our compass. And then we drop it, we forget about it, we bury it, and then you got to take some time to, dig it up, and your hands are covered in dirt, and, you've messed yourself up, and you've embarrassed yourself, and, you've defiled yourself or whatever. You've gotten into some sticky situation, and then you get back into it with more faith, more understanding, more trust that you can get back into it. That your path is not your mistakes, but your path is the steps that you're taking right now. Okay? And keep taking those steps. And appreciate that you've taken steps. We can tend to, we develop a little bit, or we establish ourselves in some peace, and then maybe it's difficult to see where we came from and how the good things that we've done, and the good practices that we have built up over time. And we have to appreciate those as well. It's not just a never-ending drudge journey of, how do I get better? How do I get to the place I want to get? That's also just another desire. Okay, so TT says, our brain usually filters a lot of things and details around us, and once someone starts meditating, eventually all these details can arise in a more detailed and present way. This is the question. If someone is presented to this kind of experience during meditation sessions, does it mean this person is in the correct path? It's a little bit vague to say that means that someone is on the correct path. The metric for being on the correct path, I would say, is a deeper and deeper valuation of goodness, a deeper and deeper valuation, and like a person to have a deeper appreciation for peace and wellness of mind rather than certain stimulation of mind. And the more that you are cultivating those kinds of mind states that appreciate goodness and appreciate the intentionality to do good, and gentleness and compassion and kindness, this is where I would say it's more about being on the correct path. But in getting into meditation, if you're starting to practice meditation and you want to see if it's working, like in a very simplistic way, then that sounds good. You have a more detailed present experience of what's happening right now, as it relates to the meditation method that you're practicing. Okay. And also a good idea of the correct path is simplicity. The moment that things start to get complicated, the moment that things start to get convoluted and multi-layered, and I've got to do this and I've got to do that, you can be sure that that's maybe in filing your taxes, that's the correct path. But in developing in meditation, it's not. The more simple, the more wholehearted, the more correct it is. Okay? Coming back to a place of simplicity, coming back to a simple meditation method. Okay, and faith. Faith, you want to read yours? Use your microphone, Faith? No? Oh, just sharing, I think. Just sharing experience. Okay. So Faith says, when I started practicing meditation regularly, my anxiety is there, but I'm a lot more calmer, and that the illnesses that I'm terrified of or think I have can just easily dismiss and move on and do other things, but everything has a process still, and I can feel that I'm progressing. And also we can think about meditation like cake. Okay? You don't just eat cake once and say, wow, I did it. I solved the problem. No, cake is something you eat at the present moment. And the joy of meditation comes by doing it regularly. That's why I'm a monk, so that my life can bring me more towards cake all the time. And that's what this community is for, so we keep showing up to meditation practice and we keep enjoying it. We keep getting to eat our cake. Okay. Meditation is just like cake. If you like cake, you need to do it. If you want the benefits of cake, although they may be quite limited, you've got to eat it. If you want the benefits of meditation, the peace, the clarity, the wisdom, the understanding, the success, you've got to do it. You got to take a bite. Okay? So at this time, let's all eat cake together, meaning that let's all practice some meditation together. All right? So find your meditation position. Okay? And this is very empowering with the mind's intention to meditate, we're putting the body in a meditation position. Most of our troubles and the trouble that we get into in the world and in ourselves is from the body, right? We're using the body to do things we shouldn't be, overeating, over drinking, or things that we're not doing, not exercising, not stretching, whatever. So it's very empowering that we're using the body right now for something very skillful, and that is to put the body down in our meditation position. Okay, so we find our meditation position. We can close our eyes. Find our breath. Feel the breath flowing in the body and flowing out. Fully here and aware at this present moment. Enjoying this breath, this healing. And as we are aware of the body breathing, we can bring a gentle smile to our face. Non-judgmental and totally loving. Gentle smile to the body and the mind. Feeling a sense of goodness and open-heartedness in ourselves, really feeling that in our body. To close our meditation session, we will offer that loving kindness to all beings. So please repeat after me. May the goodness and peace in my heart be shared with all beings. May the joy and freedom in each breath be shared with all beings. May this peace and happiness flow out in all directions. And from all directions, may peace and happiness flow in. May it be so. May it be so. May it really be so. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, we can all make a deep bow to each other, to our own practice. Thank you for all being here. I wish you all peace and happiness. And we will have another session tomorrow about this time. And hope to see you there, okay?
Thank you.